is everybody this morning? I hope you're doing wonderful on this Sunday morning. I have a story for you, and it's a story that I have not studied very much, and so it's really interesting, and I love it because it's a great example of discipleship. And so this morning we're going to be in Acts 18, and so I'm going to give you a minute to find that. Acts 18, see if you can find that in your Bible. It's in the New Testament. And we're going to be talking about Paul and Aquila and Priscilla. Okay, Aquila and Priscilla, they're a couple. And today our big picture is families can worship and tell others about Jesus. And so families can worship and tell people about Jesus. That's our big idea for today. And I want us to watch our video, and then I'm gonna come back here to explain just a little more about it. All right, enjoy the video, and I'll meet you right back here. Bye, guys.
Paul traveled to many places to share the good news about Jesus. When he traveled to Corinth, he met a man named Aquila and his wife Priscilla. I appreciate couples with names that rhyme. Aquila and Priscilla had recently left Rome and now lived in Corinth, where they worked as tent makers. Paul was a tent maker too, so he stayed with them and worked alongside them making tents. I'm sure it was an intense situation. Get it? Intense. Every Sabbath, Paul went to the synagogue and taught the people the good news about Jesus. Sometime later, Paul set sail for Syria to share the gospel. Priscilla and Aquila went with him. On the way, the ship stopped at Ephesus. Priscilla and Aquila stayed in Ephesus, but Paul traveled on. Now, a Christian named Apollos also came to Ephesus. He knew the scriptures well and taught people about Jesus. Apollos was a good speaker, but he didn't know everything that happened to Jesus. Apollos only knew about John's baptism, and there was more he needed to understand. It's like he'd only seen season 1 of the greatest story ever told. Priscilla and Aquila heard Apollos teaching things that were not quite right. They took Apollos aside and explained to him the entire story of Jesus and everything that happened after Jesus was baptized. When Apollos wanted to go to Achaia, the believers wrote a letter, urging the disciples there to welcome him. He was a great help to those who believed because he was able to argue with the Jews in public, using the scriptures to show that Jesus is Christ the Messiah.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that story. I want to go back over it a little bit just so that I make sure that you catch some of the important details, okay? So we're going to start over here in Corinth, and Paul traveled to Corinth. He came and he found these tent makers. They had something in common, and so they were Aquila and Priscilla. They were a couple, and Paul, while he was there with them making those tents, he went and he taught. And so Aquila and Priscilla, they listened to Paul. So they learned from Paul, which is why I said it's a great example of discipleship. Paul was discipling Aquila and Priscilla, telling them stories, helping them understand about Jesus, and they didn't even know it, okay? And so they were in Corinth. Well, they became good friends, and they traveled. They left Corinth together, and they traveled across to Ephesus. Well, Paul didn't stay in Ephesus, but Aquila and Priscilla, they did. And so they stayed in Ephesus, and Apollos, he came to Ephesus and he was a Christian, and he started teaching about Jesus. Well, he didn't know all the details, okay? But Aquila and Priscilla, they knew a lot of the details because they had listened to Paul when they were in Corinth. So now that Paul was no longer there, he had gone on, he had trained Aquila and Priscilla and gave them information, and enough information where they could train Apollos and tell him the correct information. So when Apollos was saying and teaching and the information wasn't quite right, they corrected him. They're like, oh, Apollos, we want you to tell the correct information about Jesus, and we want to make sure that you're telling people the right information so that they understand. Well, then Aquila and Priscilla, they helped Apollos. What a great example of discipleship, just living life together and teaching them about Jesus and teaching others how to love Jesus as well. Well, it was time for Apollos to leave Ephesus, and so he went out. So look how cool that is. These guys are all missionaries. Did you know that? Like, if you tell people about Jesus, you're considered a missionary. You're telling other people about Jesus. That's as simple as it is in loving people. So when you explain to somebody about Jesus, just like Paul explained to Aquila and Priscilla, and then Aquila and Priscilla were able to explain to Apollos, and then Apollos was able to go to another place and explain to them. How cool. What a great picture of discipleship, and that we can do this as a family. Aquila and Priscilla, they were a family, and they were able to travel together and tell others about Jesus, just like your family can. Guys, what a great example. I hope you enjoy that story. It's a story that I had never really dug deep in until today, and I love that example of that family staying together, traveling together, and getting to love on other people and telling them about Jesus. That's what it's all about. Guys, I hope you have a great week telling others about Jesus. Bye.
So we just had our special Thank You Parents program. We drew pictures, wrote poems, sang songs, stuff like that to let our parents know how special they are to us.
Doing something special was Jasper's idea, or whatever, but he also almost ruined it.
I'm sorry. I can't do this right now. My dad texted me earlier that we might be moving to another state for his job. Mom and Dad and I have been trusting in Jesus together, but it's still been hard waiting to find out if we're going or staying. I think this is it.
These are the chronicles of the Mooseberry Masterclass and the exceptional and very gifted students who attend, and also Alex.
My parents found out if we're moving or not. They text me, but I'm too scared to look.
Well, eventually you're gonna find out no matter what.
Yeah, don't you have to go home at some point? It's where you keep all your stuff.
It's not just that. I've been praying so hard that Jesus would let us stay. If I find out we have to move, does that mean Jesus isn't real? Or doesn't answer my prayers?
That sounds like a foul ball to Ollie on the street.
Yeah, that can't be right. Kablamo!
It isn't right. God is real and he always answers prayers. Just sometimes the answer isn't what we want to hear. But here's something you do want to hear. Our lives are better when we love and share God. Doesn't matter where you are, you and your family can worship and talk about God. That's something you can do in any circumstance.
I guess the Bible does tell us about a lot of people who share God's love in difficult situations. In prison, scary cities, in front of mean kings. I can do the same. No matter what this text says, me and my family can tell about Jesus' love.
Well, do you get to stay? Do you have to leave?
Not that I care, but what does the text say?
It says we're staying.